instructor course. But it has been used in elementary schools, high schools, they're using it in college. People are using it out in the professional environment for training sessions. So this is definitely something that can be a useful tool to create engagement. Now this can be used in person, and it can also be used like we're going to do today. It's also going to be used, can be used in asynchronous and asynchronous sessions. So far the past year, and Ms. Klubertons can attest to it, we've gotten some pretty good reviews from our basic instructor students about the Kahoot game, using it in the classroom. And also for our online students, they've used it as a study tool on their own. And we always throw out their caveat, this is not your only study tool, because we don't want people just to study off of that. Again, my name is Miss Heidi Butler, and Miss Monica Garcia kind of gave us a little quick down and dirty on how you guys can help participate in this to make it a little bit more interactive and not just me talking at you. And Miss Klubertons, my partner in crime in the BIT course and now in IDLE, she'll be working in the chat box as well. But if you have any questions at any time while I'm talking, or you want something a little bit more in depth, just go ahead and throw something in the chat box, because I'm looking at that as well, and I can answer those questions very easily. So for those of you that are familiar with Kahoot, do you guys have an account in your organization? Not sure. Okay. 335th has one. Is it for just your flight, or is it for the whole squadron? Okay, personal account. You have it just for the personnel course. Okay. Now, what I'm going to show you is towards the end, I'm going to show you the Kahoot that I have for, I signed it up for myself because I wanted to see what the full-blown features would be. But there's also a free version that you don't have to pay for, and we'll talk about that towards the end of this webinar. Yeah, you have the free one. Okay. So quite a few of you have some involvement with it, and then we saw 2 or 3 people that haven't heard of this at all. So again, my name is Miss Butler. I'm a basic instructor course instructor, about 1.5 years, almost 2 years in April. And I'll be moving over to the instructor developer of online learning course with Miss Klubertons. And Ms. Klubertons is also in continuation training, so she teaches a few other courses. So you may be familiar with her if you've taken some continuation training courses as well. And here's just a small bit of what we're going to be talking about in today's session and using Kahoot to enhance online instruction. We're going to talk just a little bit about some gamification and exploring gamification, using scaffolding, kind of stair-stepping your questions so your students can master that content. How you can use this to motivate your students, and Kahoot is definitely motivating. If you've played it before, you know how that music can get your heart pumping and you're trying to hurry up and answer a question before the time runs out. And then some gamification in action. And then I'm going to just end it with how to different features of Kahoot, and I'm going to actually show you my Kahoot account and kind of walk you through some of the things and actually show you what a live session could look like. So what is gamification? Gamification is a process. Not sure who was trying to mic in. It's taking parts of a game or techniques from a game and incorporating it into your learning. So it's not taking a game and putting your content into it. It's using your content and putting game parts into it. It's a motivational technique. It's an educational approach to engage your learners with the material. For those of you that have played Kahoot before, chime into the chat box if you will. What did you like about playing a Kahoot game? The music always cracks me up because I think my heart starts like beating with the music. Competition, yeah, you like the competition part. Yeah, it definitely gives you feedback if you're playing by yourself. If you're using your learning tablet, or if you're playing it online, you get feedback right away, whether you're not. Yeah, the music is. Sam Fredrickson, can you type in the chat box what is it about the music that's motivational? Yes, Miss Garcia, definitely gets the blood flowing. And I've experimented with the music in class. You can go with their original sound. I think I could do like a little selection menu. So I think about this time of year, might be some more bells and some chimes and stuff in there. But it does get your blood flowing because the music kind of gets your heart beating because that her students hate it when the music isn't on. I'm cutting in and out. How is that? Is that better? Okay. Okay. Does that sound better? Okay.
Much.
Okay. Thank you. So it's not game-based learning, it's just your learning experience is going to be enhanced and not replaced. So that's what gamification is all about. When you're exploring putting gamification in your courses or in a particular objective, you need to kind of have a goal in mind, like what is the purpose for you doing this? Some things that you want to think about is creating engagement for your students to get them involved in the material, motivating them, and also to help promote learning. When we get towards the end of this webinar, there's one portion of Kahoot that I'm kind of excited about that I want to share with you. But it would involve your Kahoots to be made public so everybody could see them, but it really gives your students the opportunity to engage with the material even more so they can use it almost like flashcards instead of a regular Kahoot game. For those of you that are familiar with it, they can use it like flashcards where the same questions that you typed in, it's now in a flashcard format so they can just flip front to back. They can also go through a Kahoot where they're just answering the questions like they normally would in a Kahoot session, but there's no time limit on there. So they're not under pressure to answer the question. And then the next mode they can do is to put that timer in there where it's making them quickly answer those questions. And then the final one is where they can challenge other classmates. So think about your goal. Just because you can gamify a lesson, should you gamify the lesson that you have? So you probably don't want to do it for every single one of the objectives that you have in your course, because that could also kind of get boring and stale for your students. But what lessons could it really help out with? You want to try to think about scaffolding when you're creating the questions that you have in your Kahoot. You definitely want to show the students, tell the students how to play the game. You don't just want to throw them in there and they don't know what's going on. Like Miss Monica did earlier, you want to walk them through what it's like, how easy it is for them to play on their own, what they need to do if there's problems with any of the questions. and kind of tell them how it works. One of the rules with Kahoot is that you are rewarded the faster you answer. So if you answer correctly and you answer faster, you will get more points than anybody else that you're playing with. Though that could be considered a downfall because you want the students not to answer quickly, you want them to answer correctly. So what you can do to try to kind of even that out is lengthen the time that the question is open. I believe the smallest amount of time is 20 seconds. And then the longest amount of time is, I want to say they have it set up for 240 seconds if you had like an elaborate problem or math problem that you needed them to work out. So you definitely want to show your students how to play that. And then you want to have those easier questions up front. While they're learning the material, while they're learning how to play the game, allow for them to work together, answer questions together as groups, make some lower level questions. And as you can see with my picture on the left-hand side of the slide, it's taking you through those different layers of questions. Is this a kind of, they just need to recall facts? Here's a term, here's a definition. Do they need to be able to analyze the information? And you might have to change the types of questions that you ask in your Kahoot that you build. Definitely pay attention to those proficiency codes, though. You don't want to have them analyze questions when at the end of the objective, they just need to know basic facts. So something to keep in mind. If you want to increase, if they're going to be using your Kahoot, if you want to increase their content mastery, I definitely recommend making your Kahoot public. And then that way the student can choose which level they want to go through. As I mentioned before, they can start off with using it in flashcard mode, where they basically, it looks like electronic flashcards flipping front to back, and it's your same questions. You don't have to type anything extra, and they can just kind of master that material. They know it or they don't know it. And when they know a particular flashcard, they can click on it and it'll give them a little green check mark. You can also have them move through to, again, what I said, where they can do the timer method for your students when they're doing it on their own in an asynchronous session. They can pick which mode they want to use. And if they want that time crunch on themselves to see if they know the material and they can quickly answer it, then I would definitely recommend that one for the students. And then if they just want a quiz mode instead of flashcards, that would be the second one in between the flashcards and the one with the timer. Or you can just create different Kahoots and just put harder questions in there. Now, what we did in the basic instructor course was we just did the review exercises that were at the end of each one of our objectives. We didn't add any extra questions in there. We just stuck to what was already in their book. Rationale behind that was so we didn't accidentally, compromise our test or anything like that. But what you could do with your students, if you wanted to, is you can have them help you create questions. So they can create questions, they can submit them to you either electronically or on paper. You kind of go through them and decide, these questions too in depth, and then you can add those to your Kahoot. And this could be a student generated Kahoot, but you build it for them, you keep it on your account for them. We did that when I was teaching. We didn't use Kahoot at the time, but when I was teaching the Manpower Apprentice course, we had software that would allow the students to have questions in there. And what I would have them do is I would have them create the questions, I would input them, and that way it was their questions they were studying from, and I didn't accidentally compromise the test. But if they went too deep into the material, I wouldn't include those questions in there. So I did screen it in that way. But you can have your students help you do that. Is everybody good so far? If you can change your status over there to a thumbs up for me. Okay. Now, again, for those of you that have used Kahoot before, you know that it can be a motivating tool, even if you've played it yourself. For those of you, I think it was 2 people said they had not used Kahoot before. I'm going to show you what it looks like at the end. So you'll definitely get to hear the music and you can see how motivating or demotivating it could be. In the classroom, it's kind of funny when they do it because you can see their screens up, and if they answer incorrectly, their screen turns red. So it's very obvious if they got the wrong answer. But it just gets them all laughing. It kind of lightens the mood, at least in my experience, what I've seen so far in the classroom, is it lightens the mood right before a test. So before the test, in the afternoon, when they're working on their speeches, I throw it out there and I say, if anybody wants to play Kahoot, you can stay in this room. If not, if you want some peace and quiet, you can work on your speech across the hall. And I find more often than not, people would stay in the room because it just gives them kind of something different to look at than going over that study guide, time and time again. When we moved to this collaborative online environment with BIC, we were trying to figure out how we could keep those same things going in the online environment. And we've shown them that you can use Kahoot in an online session. So people, they're trying to figure out how to use Collaborate or whatever platform they're using, and they're trying to get comfortable with that. But it's very easy. You can incorporate it, and I'll show you at the end. You can incorporate your slides into a Kahoot. That's the premium. That's the highest account to pay for. Or you can just make a Kahoot on your own with the free version, and then you just share your Chrome tab or your Explorer or your Edge tab, whatever browser that you have open, and you can just screen share, and you can still in a synchronous session, you can still share your screen and you can play a Kahoot with your students that are in there. If you guys could, and just this is going to set us up towards the end of our session. If you guys have a cell phone or an iPad or a tablet next to you, could you get one? So when we get to the end, I'm going to have you guys join in on this Kahoot. You don't have to do anything right now other than have a device ready. And you'll open up your browser at that time when we get ready to do it. And you're just going to go, and I just put it in the chat box, you're going to go to kahoot.it. And this is exactly what your students would do. And they would get a PIN number. They don't have to sign up for an account. They just go to kahoot.it and they enter a PIN number, and they'll be able to join the Kahoot. So with motivation, to get back on this slide, when we're talking about motivating your students, you want them to be engaged with the material. You want them to be excited about it, even if it's just a form that they have to fill out. You want to create that excitement for knowing another part of their job that they're going to be doing. Why is this form important? Why is this piece of equipment important? Why do you need to know this material? What's in it for them? To help with that motivation, again, I touched on it earlier, put those easier questions up front. By putting those easier questions up front, you're encouraging them. They're seeing that okay, I got it, I got this piece of information, and you're kind of drawing them into the lesson. When you're talking about motivation, you also want to think about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, internal and external motivation. When thinking about gamification, a lot of people think that it is heavily intrinsically motivated, that people are there just for the points. Well, playing a Kahoot session, you don't get a piece of candy, you don't get money in your bank account or anything like that. You're just getting points, and there's a leaderboard at the end, and you can see once the Kahoot is done, who made the leaderboard. What I have seen in the classroom, it gets pretty competitive in the classroom, in good fun, but it gets pretty competitive. But even though gamification can be considered extrinsic, you can make it internally intrinsic by, making sure that people are praised for, trying the game. Make sure that they understand that even though it's a game and they didn't get points and other people did, they did better than maybe the day before. Maybe at the beginning of the lesson, you played a Kahoot and they couldn't answer the question, but now at the end of the lesson, they're able to do it. So remind them of those intrinsic the value of that when playing Kahoot, that it's not about points and being on that leaderboard. You also want to make sure too that it doesn't turn ugly in the classroom or in the online environment. Some people do get a little spirited when it comes to competition, and that could kind of demotivate people. So you want to make sure that you keep that balance and you keep everybody, in a collaborative competition kind of experience. So yeah, spirited is a nice word. I'll just throw out there that I am banned for life from playing Monopoly with my brother at my dad's house. We got banned a long time ago because we were a little too spirited, and my brother left the room crying. I was the one that was spirited. So just make sure that nobody is demotivating their fellow classmates. But gamification can really help increase people's motivation. It gives them a way to engage with the material on a different level. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I can't just keep reading the same material over and over again. I'm a visual learner. I like glitz and glam and flash and all kinds of things. I can't just sit there and look at a book. It doesn't work for me. What about for you guys? Can you just look at a book and study? Nope. Hands-on visual learner gets boring. Okay. Depends on the content. I got you. I'm a kinesthetic learner. It depends on what it is we're doing. Something that I bring up in the basic instructor course is if I was going to teach you how to crochet a blanket, would you rather have me lecture to you about how to crochet a blanket, or would you rather have me show you how to crochet a blanket? If that's what you're supposed to do at the end is crochet a blanket. You would probably rather, yeah, best by doing. So this is a way to create engagement. And even in your Kahoots, you can use video clips as well. You can use it as discussion points. There's several videos that we play in the basic instructor course, and you guys might do that in your course as well. You can incorporate that into a Kahoot. And if you have a question and answer session that you do after watching that video, throw it in the Kahoot, and there's your questions up there. And there's different question types that you can ask them. Okay, depends on which type of the, okay. Kahoot can also work with distributive learning. You're giving them little bits of information over time through your course. You can also do that with the questions. How our Kahoots are set up in BIC, it's one Kahoot for the whole block of instruction. But you could, if you wanted to, create a Kahoot for each one of your objectives and use it as an option for your students to use if they want it. And it's very easy to set it up if you do, like we've got it for our whole block. And you can put the questions in a spreadsheet. Kahoot has a spreadsheet that makes it very easy to mass upload your questions. If you decided you wanted to break apart a whole block of instruction, you can make mini Kahoots out of that just using the spreadsheet. Just copy the spreadsheet multiple times and delete out the questions for each one of the objectives, and then just upload it and make a brand new Kahoot. It's very easy that way. You don't have to retype the questions. Or you can duplicate your Kahoot in the system, and then you can just delete out the questions. And that way the students could focus on maybe just one objective at a time. Use that study method. Use a flashcard specifically for the lesson that they're having process. Maybe they don't have process. You said I cut out. Can you hear me now? Okay. So where did I cut out at? I'm sorry. Okay. So if you broke apart your Kahoot into individual objectives, like I said, in the big course, we have just one big Kahoot for the whole block. So one of our Kahoots is 95 questions. Maybe your student is only having an issue with one particular objective. Kahoot can be a very useful tool, but maybe they don't want to use it for the whole block of instruction. You can just cut out those questions and create a Kahoot per objective. And then the student can work on that one. They can do the flashcards until they get familiar with it. They can move on to the game of Kahoot, but no timing, so they can get comfortable with it, with that method, with the questions popping up with the answers, and then they can move on to the timed version of it, and then they can answer that a little bit faster. When you put gamification into learning, it's a benefit for both the student and the instructor. You might have to adjust your teaching just a little bit. Students might have to, yes, ma'am. Students might have to kind of adjust their learning to make sure that they get comfortable with the platform. I definitely wouldn't make it mandatory until you know that all your students are comfortable with it, or just make it an option. We always give it to our students as an option in the basic instructor course. We don't make it mandatory. Based off those study on the mobile app, how the students can study, it can stimulate motivation and deeper learning because they can practice at different levels. Like I said, they can start off with flashcards until they get comfortable with the material. Then they can move on to kind of a more multiple choice, what they might see on their exams. And no matter what class, whatever instructor that they have, the Kahoot is going to be the same for your students. If Miss Klubertons has them, they're going to have the same Kahoot that Miss Butler's class has. So they'll get the same material. And Miss Klubertons brought up a good point about setting up for randomization. Sometimes I forget when I generate a pin code and I give it to the students, I forget to click the little button, and I'll show you that. I forget to click the button to randomize it, because then they kind of get into the mode of they know, what order the questions are coming in, and they know what order the answers are coming in. So every time they go into it, it's going to be randomized, so it'll kind of shake it up a little bit for them. Now, if you wanted to use Kahoot within a lesson, this is going to be on the premium account. This way that I'm going to show you. You will start off, you're going to put all your slides into Kahoot, the slides that you're going to present from. Exactly, Ms. Klubertons. You're going to put your slides into the Kahoot, and you're going to build your questions in there. You're going to put them wherever you want to put them in the lesson. And then when you start off, your students would see your opening slide, and you would have them go to kahoot.it, and they would enter the PIN number, and it would tell them, it would pop up and say something like, there's no questions to answer at this time. And then you would teach your lesson out of Kahoot, and when a question came up, it would ping on their phone, basically pop up on the screen, here's a question to answer. One thing that you would need to tell your students is they'd need to look at your synchronous session screen where the slides are, because that's where it's going to show the question. The question, when you're playing in the group, the question is not going to show up on their phone, just the answers. So they're going to have to look at the screen and then answer on their device. And then once that question is done, you'll keep continuing on with your slides that are in your presentation until the next question comes along. Now, if you don't want to pay for the premium account, you can still do in a synchronous session, you can still play a group play game. They would still get a PIN number to join in. They would still need to look at your screen, but what you're going to do is you're just going to share your screen, and you're just going to open up the game in the Kahoot program. You're not going to have your slides built in there. I don't know how often you guys change your slides in your courses, but I would hate for someone to go to teach a Kahoot slideshow and the slides have been changed or it's outdated material. So either way, you can do a group play in a synchronous session. You can share the screen, or you can teach, again, specifically through Kahoot. You would just have to upload your slides every time. Just in the chat box, how many of you think you would do that, use the premium program where you would put your slides in Kahoot? Yes or no in the chat box. I mean, obviously right now you don't know the price. Senator Frederickson said no. Depends on how it looks. Okay, and I'm going to show you guys that. Yeah, the price can be a big factor for sure. And you said just as unclassified. Either way, you don't have to pay for the large subscription because you can still share your screen and they can still play group play in a synchronous session for sure. And this is just the other way you can do it. You just launch the Kahoot program. There's no slides in there. It's strictly just the game and you share your screen. So inside the lesson, you would have your slides put in Kahoot, and you can't change your slides in Kahoot. You have to re-upload them if you make changes, and then you have to delete your other ones out. And it doesn't allow you to pick and choose which slides you upload. It's going to upload your whole slide deck. Now, I was playing around with the program. I wanted to see how many. Yes. And this would be also if you made it public as well. Ms. Kluberton's brought up a good, make sure that you get with your CDMs and make sure that they're okay with you putting questions in Kahoot, especially if you use the material from the course. And also, I believe, not quite sure, don't quote me on it, but I believe it would probably have to be in your POI as well, that you're utilizing this as a tool or as active learning tool. And for the single play outside the classroom, this is what I'm kind of excited about. This is what I was talking about at the beginning of the lesson. The one thing that you have to do is you have to make your Kahoot public. Means anybody that logs into Kahoot, they could find your lesson. That's the only, to me, that's the only drawback I would see about making your Kahoot public. But if you do make the Kahoot public, that's where your students have the most flexibility with the Kahoot game. It allows them to use the flashcard mode. Then they can use the game mode where there's no time limit on there. They can use the game mode where there is a time limit. And they can also challenge their classmates. That's only if your Kahoot is made public. But if you don't make it public, you can still send a pin to your students. Your students can still use it, but they can only use it in that game mode, and there's a timer attached to your questions. So they don't have all the study features that they could have. Now, if I talk to my CDMs and they were fine with me making it a public Kahoot, I would make mine public because that gives the students more options to study from. If you make your Kahoot public, other people on Kahoot, any user, can copy your Kahoot completely and they can use it for something else. I believe Quizlet is that way. Is anybody familiar with Quizlet or have they used it before? Okay. So you kind of have to weigh, you know, the benefit to the student or, you know, what's best for the course if you don't want that material out there. Some things that I saw in their feedbacks for this particular feature, there was a lot of college professors that were using Kahoot as a formative assessment. But what they didn't like was to use the public feature they had no control over the material. They could issue it as a test in the morning, and then by the afternoon, the classes that were held in the afternoon, they had all the answers. So think about what is this Kahoot for? Is this a tool for the students to study from, or am I using this more as a formative assessment? And if you're going to use it more as a formative assessment, then I would keep your Kahoot private. And that just means that your students are only going to have one method to study from. That's the timed version. And they can do that on their own as many times as they want, but they don't have that flashcard feature or that without timer feature. If you guys had a choice, which would you do, public or private Kahoot for your students? If you had a choice. You got 3 for private. Quite a few folks for private. So if you are going to use it for private, just remember that your students won't have as many ways to use that Kahoot. They'll only have, in private mode, they'll only have one way to use it, and that's the timed version. Now you can make it public, let's say for a day, and then you could turn it back to private. You can easily toggle private and public on and off, but during the time that it's public, if anybody knew the name of your course, then they could grab that material. And again, that was some of the complaint was people had invested a lot of time inputting this information only for someone else to just take it and kind of do whatever they wanted with it. Me, I have a problem with Quizlet. I don't trust the questions that other people put in. So if I was going to use Quizlet, I would input my own questions anyways. Okay. If you're not looking at the chat box, Miss Arnold put in there that she said she saw something about Kahoot developing an enterprise version that would solve that, and that was a big question and concern that people had in their feedback response. They wanted some way to be able to lock it down. But I definitely, when I saw that there was multiple ways that a student could study, I was pretty excited about that. And then again, my only disappointment was, well, I don't know that I want to make my Kahoot public. So that's the end of the presentation or the slide portion of this. If you are interested and you haven't taken other courses with faculty development, if you are interested in developing online learning or you're going to be instructing in online learning, we do have 2 additional courses that are available if you haven't taken them. Is the IDLE, the Instructor Developer of Online Learning, and we also have the Analysis of Learning, the AOL course. Got a little shout out there. Ms. Kluberton's put a link in there again as well. But there is our information on that slide. So now I'm going to ask you guys again, from those of you from the very beginning to now, how many of you think you will use Kahoot in your courses, even just if it's one objective? Yes or no in the chat box. You can put a Y or however you want to answer. So we got a possibly, haven't sold him yet. We got a me, a yes. You definitely want to see it live. Well, we're going to do that. Good tool to have in the toolbox. Okay. Develop one to test it out. Okay. We've already got, she's already sold on it and using it. Sergeant Fredrickson, she said she loves it for a tool for the students. Mr. Edwards, he says absolutely. He's in our office. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you. And I'm going to show you a Kahoot that I have. And this was today's presentation, but I put it in Kahoot. And this would be if you paid for the premium version. and this was the slides put in there. But as we come along to the questions, you can see how, the students could use it. And you guys should be able to see my screen, correct? Ms. Klubertons, if you could mic up for me and just let me know if you could see it. I'm only working on one screen here.
I still see your last slide with the information on it. I don't see your new one yet.
Okay.
You're going to have to stop sharing the slide presentation and then share the screen.
There we go. I think that's working now.
It is.
Okay. All right. This is what you would see if you opened up a Kahoot as an instructor. You can see on my screen, I've got 17, it looks like 17 questions in here. It's actually mostly slides. And you just see kind of like a little blank area. It says 1 slide's imported, number 2 slides imported, and then the third one is a quiz question. So what I'm going to do, just so you guys can kind of see what it looks like, is I'm going to hit play. Now, I have 2 choices on here. You guys can see them on the screen. One is to teach. This is for your virtual classrooms. One is going to be for self-paced learning. So if I wanted to assign a Kahoot to my students for them to use as they wish, or if I wanted to assign it as homework and then see how they did the next morning, I could use assign. But we're going to click on teach. And just give it a moment to pop up. So with this premium version, if you look at the top, I can have up to 2,000 players. I am not going to be teaching 2,000 students, but that is one thing that people look at for the premium subscription is based off the number of players that they're going to be having at a particular time. So I can have my students play against each other. So each person, each player has their own device, or I could have them work on teams. Now, we had 2 weather students in my last big instructor class, and they were told that they had to do their sessions, they had to do all of their work on the job. They weren't allowed to do it from home. So those 2 could have done the team because they were in the same room together. But in this type of environment, you would want to pick classic where everybody's going to have their own device. And if you guys want to try this out, and gals, if you want to try this out as a student, this is where you're going to be typing in a PIN number. There wasn't a screen change.
Is it supposed to change?
Yeah, it was supposed to be where it said screen share. Let me stop and share it again.
Yep, that's what you're going to have to do.
And my whole screen just went black on this end.
We just see the slide presentation. Oh, we lost her audio. I have a feeling she'll be back. Oh, there she is.
Can you guys hear me?
I'll edit this portion out.
Yes, you can hear me. Thank you.
We're just seeing the last slide from the presentation.
It still didn't close it out?
Mm-mm. Hang on.
I'm trying to close it out here.
See if you can share it now.
How did that work?
Yep.
Okay. So did you guys see the slide at all?
No, we just see the instructor version.
Okay, that's where I wanted to be at. Okay.
Okay.
So we would click on play. I would go to teach mode. Did it change screens?
No.
Dang it. It's opening up in a different tab. I think that's what the problem is.
Yeah, you're going to have to screen share the tab that it's opening.
Okay.
And as all you can see, yes, this is what happens with virtual learning. Things happen.
Tap dance, tap dance.
If this were a real classroom, I would break out in a tap dance.
Yes, yes, I would. And I would be laughing right now.
Okay, still just seeing the slide presentation.
Oh, I know what I can do to get rid of that.
Is this screen sharing?
All right, you guys should see this purple screen now.
Yes.
Okay. So while the Kahoot is loading, I'm going to pick classic because I want us all to play against each other. And you guys see my screen change to say get ready to join?
Yes.
Okay, now you can hear the Kahoot music on your device. You can't hear the Kahoot music?
No.
But you can see the screen. If you enter on your device, Kahoot.it, we got 3 people that got in. So you would go on your browser to Kahoot.it. This is what you would tell your students to do. They would enter this PIN number. And you just give everybody a moment to join in. And just for time's sake, I'm just going to keep these 5 folks that joined, and I'm going to go ahead and click on start, and I'll start the session. And this, you want to make sure all your students have joined. And this would be if you were going to be teaching straight out of Kahoot with your slides. So what you would see is that it says there's no question to answer at this time. And this would be if you have the premium account and your slides are built in to Kahoot, or you've uploaded them to Kahoot and you've interspersed questions. So for those of you that are going to be playing along, you would just follow along with the slides and we would have our discussion like we have had. And we've got the, hi, there's me again. There's Miss Monica. And now here's your first question. And it'll pop up on your phone for you to answer, but you'll have to look at the screen to see the question. All right, and then it shows on your screen how people answered. You can have media that you put in there. You can have pictures that you can put in there. You can have pictures instead of word answers. And then you will click on next, and everybody can still see the screen, correct? You got see how everybody answered? Yes? Okay. Sorry, I can't. I've only got one screen. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. We can see it.
Okay. So then you'll go on to your next slide. Again, it shows them that there's no question to answer at that time. You would continue on with your next slide. Here's your next question. This one's open-ended, so you can type in your answer. And then you can see it on the left-hand side of the screen. It's giving them more time to answer the question because they actually have to type in their answer. So different ways that you can engage your students, more than just a yes, no, or a multiple choice. They actually have to have a response in there. And you can change these times within Kahoot for each question on how long you want to give them time to answer the question. All right, got one more person that needs to answer. I think we had 5 in our game. Even if you just put an X in there, I'll be fine with that. Oh, we had more than 5?
Yeah, I finally got in.
Okay. Now, I wish you guys could hear the music because you can't really appreciate Kahoot until you have that music that changes your heartbeat and get you all frazzled into answering the question. But again, once the session is over, if you guys want to create a free account, you can really appreciate it. So we've got 6 answers submitted, and then I can just click on Show Answers. So we've got more information, and someone highlighted the word more. When you have a fill in the blank question, it gives you the option to highlight different words in your response. Somebody wanted new knowledge, information about how using Kahoot in class so I can bring it back to my unit and hopefully I can convince them incorporating it. Yes. Again, moving on to the rest of our slides. And you can add as many questions in there as you want. You can go through several slides at a time before you get to a question. And now I've asked a poll question. This is another type of question that you can ask in Kahoot. Question is up on the screen. And then you just answer the poll. And you notice the time is short because this is a different type of question. All right. Will you use Kahoot in your next training? 4 people said 100% yes, they will. 2 people said not in my next session, but I have one in mind that they might use it in. Okay, so that's good. I believe I have one more question here. And this question is a word cloud asking, how did you like today's session? And then you're going to type your responses in. I like that last one. So you guys can see that there's different types of questions that you can answer. If you wanted to pay for the premium account, how you can incorporate your slides into it, and this is what your students would see. They would see the slideshow with questions intermingled in there. At the end of a Kahoot session, it'll give you that leaderboard, and it will give you points associated with who scored the most points. And our winner is Techie. Then it also shows our runners up.
Yvette's the winner.
I really wish you guys could have heard the music, because the music really makes the program funny, because it just had music going back and forth that was in time with that. When the Kahoot session starts, it's a big gong sound.
And also for the self-paced version, I know this from a class, this was in one of my master's courses, a professor did it. He actually had us do the self-paced version, and even with the self-paced version, you can play against each other, and it still does the podium to see who got the most points when it's the self-paced version. So that's
Yes.
cool too.
So if you wanted to rub it into people's faces who was the winner, you could go click on back to podium and we could see it all again.
I think we lost Heidi's audio.
No,
You still
I just stopped talking.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Because I was switching back. All right, now you guys should see the regular screen, correct?
We see the last slide again.
Our last slide?
Yes.
Okay. So that's what a quiz would look like in a synchronous session if you had your slides built in there. If you didn't want to use that version and you just wanted to have the questions, it would look the same. You would just kind of in your mind throw those slides out of the way, and then you could play the game with your class that way. You would share the application, and definitely like we experienced today, you want to make sure with your students that everybody can see the slide before you get the game started. For some reason, once people get into a Kahoot session, they start getting some emotion involved in it. So if they can't answer a question or they miss something, they kind of get a little excited. So you definitely want to make sure that your students, everybody can see it before you get started. Yeah, it gets insane.
There's a lot of, oh man.
Yeah.
Ah,
You have
I
to
knew
tell them
that.
to turn off their audio. Definitely have to tell them to turn off their audio. Now, if people were going to do this in an asynchronous session, they could use their device or their laptop or computer, whatever it is they will just go to kahoot.it. They would type in that PIN code, and they would be able to play the game. They would see the question and the answers on the same screen because they're playing by themselves and they're not in a synchronous session, so they can kind of go through it themselves. Now, I've had in the basic instructor course, our toughest block of instruction is our block 2 of instruction, where they're talking about ISD, we're talking about measurement, and we're talking specifically Air Force Tech Training Organization kind of structure and responsibilities, who does what. Not every other branch of the service that comes in our course has problems, but people seem to have problems with that block of instruction if they've never been involved in tech training or they're not familiar with a lot of Air Force terminology because they don't have really anything to compare it to. The feedback that I've gotten in the synchronous sessions and when I'm talking with my students and I ask them how they played Kahoot or did they play Kahoot by themselves, because I haven't played it in BIC synchronously yet. But I asked them how they felt, and they said, that they wish they could have it in class. And obviously, in this time frame that we have right now with this pandemic, we can't do that. But they said that they really like using Kahoot, especially for that block of instruction, because it is so difficult to grasp. So if you have a block of instruction or an objective that you know for sure that students really struggle with, gamification for that objective or for that block of instruction could be a good tool. And that gives them a different way to engage and look at the material. And you might see that students can master the material better, faster. They like it more with Kahoot. For my two folks at the very beginning, Do you think you have enough information and kind of experience with what Kahoot looks like that you think that you might use it? I believe it was 2 people at the very beginning. I see Miss Arnold is typing. Now, once this session is done, I have a list of links for the Kahoot website, kind of a get you started kind of link so you don't have to dig around and look for yourself. Yes, the 2 with that had no experience with it. That's who I was asking. What I included on the list of links, and you can just click on these links and go straight to them. I put 7 links. The first link to click on is just a comparison of the plans, the features, and the prices of Kahoot from the free version all the way up to the premium account. So then you can kind of see, if you pay for a version, but you don't want to pay for the high dollar version, kind of what you're missing. Then it goes into, there's a link directly on how to create an account in Kahoot, hosting a game and how to play it in a group setting, how to use the mobile app and issue challenges to your students. There is a Kahoot, or a link that says how to create a Kahoot and questions, and it also includes information on how to use their spreadsheet template to mass upload questions. Otherwise, you're going to have to hand type every question in. If you did pay for the premium account, there's a link for importing slides. I also included a link to use videos in your questions. So if you have discussion questions that you normally have in your classroom, your physical classroom, this is a way to create engagement by having them. You pull up the Kahoot that has the video in it, and then you just have the Kahoot questions that you would normally ask in the classroom. Ask those questions within the Kahoot. So play the video through Kahoot, then throw up the questions. And you can still use Kahoot as a game just for those things to create discussion. And then again, there's the study mode. There's a link to the study mode. There's a small little video. But again, with the study mode, the only caveat is your Kahoot has to be made public. So all those links will be included. Ms. Garcia said that she will send an email out through Eventzilla to all of you, and that will be an attachment on there. So if you wanted to get started or you wanted more information, those links are all there. And I found those links, I kind of narrowed it down to them of just kind of the down and dirty and how to, a quick get started kind of guide. Do you guys have any questions for me about Kahoot at all? I do have some tips on the spreadsheet if anybody wants those.
And I will send out the links out, what she's talking about. I'll send that out when I send out the link to the recording.
Okay, so for Sergeant Fredrickson, you download the template from their website. And what I did just to make it easy was I just had the Word document that had our review questions in it for the end of each objective. And I literally just cut and paste the questions in there. And then I did the same with the answers. And then you just literally upload that. You upload that to Kahoot and all your questions are there. Otherwise, you're going to have to hand type each one in there. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, what you can do is if you wanted to break it apart by objective, if you had one block, you could just duplicate that spreadsheet and then just cut those questions out. Yes. So for over 100 questions, you have to make multiple Kahoots for a block. So for our block 1 in BIC, I have to give them 2 pin numbers. There's 2 Kahoots they have to play to get all the questions because you are limited on the number of questions per Kahoot. Oh, so you're saying in total, yeah. And then also on the spreadsheet, when you're typing your questions in there, you're cutting, you're pasting your questions in there. If the words turn red, that means you exceeded the character limit for the question. So you're just going to have to shorten up the question. So I had to do that on a few of ours in BIC. And then I just let the students know that some thes and us had to be removed, but the question, the meat of the question is there. But you can definitely do it for all those blocks of instruction. But the spreadsheet was really handy. And also a thing that I found, like when my students have come back to me and tell me that there was an error with one of the questions, one of the answers was wrong. If you change it, you can change it really quickly, but you have to issue a new game pin, which that's easy as well. You have to give them a new game pin. Otherwise, they're going to keep seeing that wrong information. Yeah, and all of that's on the Kahoot website for that spreadsheet. And that is one of the links that I gave you, how to add questions, and there was a link to their spreadsheet as well. But Kahoot does a really good job. They have screenshots, and they also have the words, with it, those different steps to fill it out.